Now, as you may have seen, a new film opens this week starring Colin Firth as the railwayman, a prisoner of war tortured by the Japanese while working on the building of the Thai-Burma Death Railway.
It's an emotional true story that coincides with the publication of a new book about a young priest from our region who was also one of the 50,000 captives.
But it wasn't until after Eric Cordingley's death that his family discovered his secret diary and papers cataloguing the unspeakable horrors dished out by the Japanese during the Second World War. Natalie Gray has this report.
This is the BBC. Allied forces in Singapore have surrendered to the Japanese.
When we surrendered, the Jap said we weren't men. A real man would die of shame.
You have no honor.
You're here to help us.
To build a railway.
Tens of thousands of brave young men worked on that railway. The suffering was unimaginable. Among them was Eric Cordingley, a young army chaplain imprisoned by the Japanese in 1942. He was a former rector of Stevenage who became Archdeacon of Norfolk and later Bishop of Thetford.
The railwayman is famous for having come back full of hatred and then going back later on and meeting his guard and finding forgiveness. The interesting thing about my father is he never felt any hatred for the Japanese.
Like many former prisoners of war, he rarely talked of those terrible times. It was only after his death that his children stumbled upon his wartime secrets.
Well, this is the type diary here, which is actually all just like that. And beginning it's typed on one page only. Towards the end, it's typed on both sides. Obviously, they were running out of paper.
Gosh, that's very precious, isn't it?
We have an identity disc in Japanese on one side.
Gosh.
And English the other side.
Eric Cordingley survived. 55% of prisoners didn't. In this rare recording from 1975, he tells how hard that was to witness.
I think the hardest job for me was the dreadfulness of being up on the railway and having hundreds of men desperately, or thousands of men, 3,000 of them, and having to be present or wanting to be present at the death of each one of them, as I tried to be, and then taking them out afterwards and burying perhaps 20 or 30 of these starved, sick men who had died, mostly in my presence.
This is the burial record, because as a chaplain he had to keep note of everyone who died and where they died and where they were buried. And it's so touching. It's in pencil because he didn't have a pen. Page after page after page after page of people, who they are and when they died and what they died of.
And despite all the suffering, they still managed to send Christmas cards to one another. Eric Cordingley is buried in the Jesus Chapel at Norwich Cathedral, a man who saw so much evil but never once lost his faith. Natalie Gray, ITV News, Norwich.
And Natalie's story was based on this book called Down to Bedrock, The Diary and Secret Notes of a Far East Prisoner of War Chaplain. And it's by his daughter Louise Chaplain.
OK, we're looking